We're recording. Okay, so we are on time today, and our John Butler is running a little late from a medical exam or something like that, but hopefully he'll join us. It is June 24th. I can't believe that half of the year is already gone. I feel like I talk to John Reynolds every day and Llewellyn King just every 10 minutes. And it's already 2026, halfway. Amazing. With summer started on the 21st. The World Cup is happening. Uh, uh, the macro issues in the world order continue to be a challenge. We don't even talk about Russia or Ukraine anymore, or Venezuela for that matter. And we're up to more and more things. So fascinating. The economy continues to move along. Gas prices are coming down a little bit. Um, and there's a lot of activity, cities, utilities, RFPs, business investments, deployment of technology. I just came from Atlanta, where I was with a new partner of ours, Jugano, and they deploy their lights in downtown Atlanta with partnership with the city of Atlanta and Georgia Power. And the mayor committed to having the 100,000 plus streetlights all in the Jugana platform, which is a Wi-Fi broadband, sensors of all kind platform. Very, very cool solution. Reasonably priced. So interesting. And then, APPA event is going on right now or actually next week, I'm sorry, in Boston. And then all the major shows for the year have gone by, EEI and UTC and Distributech, and we got let's see, we got Seagrid coming up in Toronto, and we got IEEE in Minneapolis coming up in July, and then we have TPPA, Texas Public Power Association here in Austin in July as well. Lots of activities, and we'll see what they get from update from our guest today. But curious what's on Llewellyn King's mind as he's been traveling, and yeah, I think he's boasting a new haircut today.
Oh, yeah, maybe. Yeah, every so often. There's not a lot of hair, but it still grows.
What's
Yeah.
going on, Llewellyn?
Um, well, this is a seminal time. Things are changing. Let's begin with Europe. It's experiencing extraordinary weather, a heat dome over Europe, the like of which it has never seen, particularly Northern Europe. We're more used to it. They are more used to it in Southern Europe. This, I fear, is a harbinger of this summer for us here, that we are likely to have extreme heat. One of the side things that came out of the EI meeting, which I did not attend this year, but it was well reported by my friend Herman Termish, um, was a protest in a press conference where local people said they couldn't afford their electricity, and with the heat they were experiencing at that point, uh,
Wow.
um, they they couldn't live without air conditioning. So suddenly there's a new dimension: air conditioning, food, or whatever. Uh, and this is going to become a really large problem throughout the Southwest, where temperatures are going to be very, very high indeed. And as a consequence, we can anticipate tremendous difficulty with utilities not doing cutoffs, which they might otherwise do, and people not being able to afford the huge bills that will come in if we have sustained periods in many states of over 100 degrees for a month or 2 months, or even higher than 100, up to 120, which is about where human life stopped trying. This is a new dimension. This is tough on utilities, tough on people, And there's no quick fix. There is no single grand gesture that the federal government or the state governments can do which will alleviate the price of heat, the high cost of air conditioning. If you make that global, places like India, people will die in very large numbers. I've been looking at the morbidity rates in California, I beg your pardon, in Nevada. Hundreds of people die every year. It's very hard to count them. Same thing in Arizona. I think Arizona is over 500. And it's very hard to count people who die because of the heat. Often it seems like something else, a heart attack. It's the traditionally vulnerable that are suffering and will suffer, the old, the sick, and the young. Children, babies, etc., will have a great deal of difficulty dealing with the heat. We also have something additional. We're likely to see in many of the southwestern states water shortages. I did a program this week with a member of one of the Indian tribes, the Ute, who is also a member of the Keystone Policy Center. And he said that not only were they going to be dealing with heat, but also with water shortages. The situation with the Colorado River, as most people know, is pretty bad. And there's no quick fix there either. Too many people depend on the river. And if it doesn't have water, agriculture suffers, people living downstream suffer, electric generation suffers. So it's a very grave situation that we're facing. Politically, we're seeing changes everywhere. Most notably this week is the sudden collapse of Keir Starmer, the English Prime Minister, who just lost the confidence of his party, did not wait to be voted out by his party. And now he's going to be replaced by somebody from the north of England, but it's very hard to know what kind of policy he will bring with him. He has advocated what the British call devolution, which is an increased amount of political authority to regions, to the counties. They don't have states, they have counties, and to the municipalities. Devolution originally meant more power to Scotland and Wales. Now it means something else. It means more power, in this case, to the north of England. How that will fix England's egregious economic problems is hard to say. If it is going to be divided up between north and south, which is always there as an incipient challenge to the British system, to Britain, because so much prosperity is around London in the south, and so little since the collapse of British industry in the north. It's very hard to see what is going to happen. It is compounded by the after effects of Brexit. 10 years ago, Britain voted itself out of the common market, and I feel some closeness in that because I had a lot of dealings with the common market. But much earlier, when I was a very, very young man, I worked for the British publisher, Lord Beaverbrook, actually opposing Britain's entry into the common market, which I later came to see as a great error and didn't work. Britain entered the common market, and foolishly, because of various influences, various slogans, a lot of nonsense, as the English would say, a lot of hogwash, or you might say a lot of hogwash. They would say a lot of codswallop. If you don't know what codswallop is, go and fill to fish, and the bit you take out of the middle, that's the wallop. But about sovereignty, etc., and a lot of sentimentality about the times that were. So Britain is in a bad way. It's got a new prime minister. To my mind, he's unlikely to fix things unless he changes course. Well, he isn't prime minister yet, but it's a foregone conclusion. So looking forward, we don't see anything very optimistic. We have a very dubious deal with Iran. Uh, we have a lot of contentious issues domestically. Our former allies are really mad at us in Asia and Europe and even in the Middle East. The United Arab Emirates is the latest. They said, according to a headline in the Washington Post today, we have been played. So it's not a pretty picture, and yet the country is fairly prosperous. Unemployment is not out of control, and summer is here, and America is a country that celebrates summer almost more than any other I have lived in. It's our happy place, our happy time. So one would hope that we don't have excessive heat, that we don't have shortages of electricity, and that we get through these contentious times with a little bit of summer frolic and fun.
Hmm. Well, before I introduce you to our guest, I have to say that lots of interesting news on the tech world around Qualcomm getting into play, the AI segment. They are announcing a bunch of chips and they're going head on with NVIDIA. And so NVIDIA continues to bend the rules of trajectory and collapsing all kinds of old giants, and all those giants are now responding in big ways, including Google and many others. And it's kind of fascinating. And then the SpaceX IPO has taken the topic of data centers in space. Curious to see what our guest thinks about that and many other topics to the next level. And now there's a fury of companies doing all kinds of things that nobody wanted to touch 10 years ago, and getting funding, which is fascinating. So it's interesting times to be alive with all the challenges that Llewellyn shared, plus everything else that is going on. So our guest today is a old friend, John Reynolds, president of Agile Fractal Grid. And Agile is created a platform to help rural and campus communities achieve energy security and meet renewable energy goals, but also providing gigabit broadband access. It's an interesting play, probably nothing close to what the Span, NVIDIA, Pulte relationship on building AI data centers for compute in a distributed fashion, one node at a time. But, something in a similar concept, in a different way. So, welcome, John.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Wanted to know what you're thinking or any comments about what we just have been talking about, and perhaps your thoughts about specifically on things like, data centers in space and what's going on with the grid.
Well, I think as you and Llewellyn were discussing, it is very accurate portrayal of the contemporary situation, and I'm seeing this, and it affects pretty much everything that we're doing. Also, we have just a number of things going on. I'll touch on them, but this will echo some of the things that have just been described as far as what's going on. First of all, before anything else, I need to thank Johnny Butler relative to his introduction to us down in Louisiana to LSU some time ago. That has all turned out to be amazingly important. We're running forward with the hydrogen project down there, and you might
Mhm.
see Louisiana. Where is Louisiana? Well, Louisiana is in a place where you can actually do something right now, but it needs specific ideas. So anyhow, that's worked out very fine. The Cavendish project is starting down there, courtesy of his introductions, but it's from the private sector. It's not from any public
Mhm.
funding that took place. So that's going quite well. I wanted to mention just this, of the various things going on. We had a very interesting call some months ago from the folks out at Hoover Dam. You mentioned the Colorado River situation. It's pretty germane. When the water goes down to being kind of half high, the dam is unable to generate as much electricity as it does when the lake is full out there, and that's specifically the Colorado River. So we were asked to come out and join the arrangement out there from an energy standpoint. I'm not sure everybody is familiar with this, but the Hoover Dam actually was created in World War II, and it was created to generate a lot of electric power for creating the war materials that were necessary. And after the war was over, it was privatized, and a lot of different companies are operating out there. And so it's very interesting to be called in by the current owners of a number of stuff from the manufacturing complex that was out there. It was originally just a few homes that were out there. Now it's the second largest city in Nevada. It's adjacent to Las Vegas. It's Henderson. And so this giant manufacturing complex still is very interesting. They create about 20% of all the titanium in the world. About 85% of all the materials go into batteries for the United States. As far as there's a whole bunch of things that take place. And the problem is a lot of this stuff has been there for like 40 years, and things get old. Other problems occur. So we're called in by current owners of a significant piece of all this to help modernize what's going on out there. And as you get in to see what's going on, the fact that the water is going down the Colorado River is a very important thing. Ordinarily you can manufacture things at amazing costs when it doesn't really cost you any money for the electric power that is coming into what's going on. But we're working with them out there to go through the first of all, get rid of the amazing problems that have shown up recently. So you got to get out of survival mode and then into a more finished mode. So we're going to be doing a digital twin of the environment out there and a methodical replacement of things to bring them up to modern scale. In the communications area that you mentioned before, a second round is the energy area. And then to the whole continuous flow manufacturing processes, because there's a lot of things that you can do out there when you set things up to create new materials that bring in lots new revenue and that sort of thing. But it'll be a digital twin extravaganza. So I've got a lot of interested people around the United States that are interested in participating in that as we do it. So anyhow, I think stay tuned and watch what happens as we do this. If the water condition continues as Llewellyn was introducing here, they'll probably need to be able to generate their own power as far as what's going on. That's the problem. Most of the power from Hoover Dam goes to Los Angeles and to Phoenix, and less than 10% actually stays in Nevada as far as what comes out through those many transmission lines that come out from the facility. So at any rate, it's where it is. It's out of the big Google data centers built in across the street and other things going on. So there's more than just the manufacturing complex that's part of this area. So anyhow, that's very exciting. We got the team out there going through the stages on that. So that's a very interesting. But it's made out of different parts, different composable parts. We have other projects that are looming here that you use the different pieces. No two sites are ever the same. You have to make it composable, but there is a finite number of parts that you can build things from, but you have to do it with the big picture in mind, as opposed to just a patchwork for a simple, elementary solution. So anyhow, that's kind of the introductory. I have some bigger
But
things for you, but if you have any questions on this, I can.
yeah, it seems, John, and I defer back to some late developments going on in Texas. Governor Abbott, in Texas is a big proponent of businesses moving in, but when it comes to the data center, they're now shifting their gears, and the governor has directed state regulators to implement super strict requirements for data centers, AI data centers in particular. And he's basically saying to all the hyperscalers, build your own generation. Don't count on the ERCOT market to supply you energy. Build your own generation. And obviously, when you think about all the elements, electrification of transportation, new people moving here, housing, traditional manufacturing, the state is growing too fast, and the new data centers need significant amount of water and power, to the tune of, every new data center's hyperscaler is equivalent to something like 1 million homes, something like that. It's just gigantic. So it's interesting that, I think that this will probably birth the next generation of microgrids, because obviously what could happen behind the meter is that the hyperscalers not only build a data center but maybe build the housing and the facilities for the people who work at the data center, especially if they're put in the middle of nowhere. And so what are your thoughts on that? And obviously, microgrids have been around forever, but are gaining more and more popularity among the Department of Defense and hospitals and critical users of energy. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that's it, right square in the bullseye of what's going on. The Texas arrangements are very aggressive in these areas, but you'll find this springing up elsewhere. What we found, just as far as our own interconnection with the people that run the large data centers, is that they all know that they're going to have to generate their own energy because of a variety of things. And if you're going to have to do that, it takes you about 30 seconds for your thinking to shift to the fact, well, if we're going to have to do this, we may as well generate more power than we need for the data center. So let's become a virtual power plant for the community so that we can sell power. As far as what's going to say, make it a revenue opportunity as opposed to a cost opportunity. So what I'm seeing here is relatively double the amount of power that the data center needs. But when you do it behind the meter and you work a special arrangement with the utilities, then it does not affect the rates of the cost of electric power to the residents
Right.
within the area.
John,
Yes.
you can say it doesn't affect the rates, but you're putting them into the competition with the utilities in the supply chain, in the fuel supply, and that affects the rates. If people want more than there is, the price goes up. And so there's something a little bit disingenuous about saying, oh, well, they're going to produce their own and they're discreet and it's safe. No, they're not. If they become utilities, they're in the same world as the other utilities. They're trying to get the same equipment, the same transformers, the same poles and wires and generators, and the same natural gas or whatever the driver is. And this is going to create a tremendous pressure on other electric prices. It is just not that easy to separate out something like electricity. It doesn't quite work. It sounds okay, but it's more semantic than practical. I think it will happen, but I think it will happen, and the cost of electricity to the consumer will inexorably go up.
Well, I think, first of all, thank you for bringing this up because it is exactly the problem that has to be solved. But if you look at it, well, what is the solution to the problem as opposed to the amplification of the problem. Let me describe another activity that we have going on. We have been approached by a number of people that are in the new nuclear business, wanting to generate power with different techniques. And so you have eight or nine or more different techniques going on. Each one is trying to sell their particular arrangement. But we've been watching this, and there are certain breakthroughs if you look at the whole nuclear program as an ecosystem from beginning to end, as opposed to just some piece part that would be introduced as far as what's going on. And so we've looked at it, and it's still you still got a couple of years to go before it becomes good for the data centers. Right now, everybody's using natural gas as far as their approach for these big data centers. But the model that's come up, and this is spurred by the Louisiana situation that I mentioned before, where Johnny was so useful in the introductions. There's a particular program that's still in its formative state, but the concept behind this is that you implement your power generation facility on a military base. It's inside the gates, and it's very interesting. But you use special arrangements on this, so that it's a really private enterprise that is doing this. There are special programs that allow you to work for the base, and you form this partnership with the base, and it's very interesting because you don't have to put it out for competitive bid. There's other interesting things because it's the utility that's your partner. It's not you creating a new competitor to the utility. No. It's the utility that is going to operate the arrangement. It's just under special rules that are separate from the usual rules. And so you put it together. You have this effort going on, and you generate power on the base. And so the base commander needs to be into this because it's really for the base's benefit that you're generating this power for the resiliency of the Department of Defense. And they're able to make decisions much quicker on a military base because they're not subject to all the same regulations in a direct sense that you are otherwise. So it's good to have the base a piece of this, but you have to have the utility as a partner also, because the arrangement is the utility is still selling electric power to the base. It's just that it's been generated on the base, and they are firm partners as far as what this is all about. But it doesn't affect the rate base as far as the what goes into the computation as far as the assets that are there. The other thing that you do in this particular approach is you bring the city in as a partner, because there are things that you can do with the city as a partner on this relative to the support of emergency services and other kinds of things that are very useful, and you have to let them decide. This is not something that you're bringing as a brainstorm to them. As you go through the process, they pick out what they want, and you look at what this is all about, and you address all the concerns right up front, very transparent as far as what's going on. Now the other clever thing that's going on is that sure, you're generating a lot of power on the military base, but you're essentially putting in data centers on the military base, not large, huge hyperscale data centers, but let's call them edge cloud types of data centers, which are set up with the latest in the semiconductor chip arrangements. I mean, every week you have a new announcement of some new thing. So you want to have ultra modern arrangements, but these modular things go into place, and they are positioned in conjunction with the power generation arrangements, so that it's really a small data center, or I would say medium-sized data center that's going in. And you don't just put one in, you put two. You have a kind of a left-hand side and a right-hand side for resiliency sake. You run a medium voltage DC bus in a ring around the base that everything attaches to and radiates AC power into everything. But there's a very interesting arrangement when you merge AC power as well as DC power relative to this arrangement, and you can do it very interchangeably with the current technology that's available. So you do this, but you're interfacing back to through the utility to the public. You're also interfacing to the local ISO as far as what's going on, as far as making power available to the rest of the region. And so you put this together so that it's a real arrangement as opposed to a simple high school science experiment that's going on. And you work in conjunction with the other utilities. You work in conjunction with the ports because the heavy infrastructure pieces for transportation and the like, which we're into in a big way with what we're doing with the secure supply chain activities as far as what's going on. We have the port operators are very much into this because after it goes into the military base, it becomes okay, and then it's okay to implement these in port facilities or other large facilities as far as what's going on. So you do this, but you do it in such a way that, yeah, sure, you did it for a military base, but the reality is, in conjunction with the governor of the state, what you want to do is a bunch of the military bases. So it becomes a mesh, if you will. And this is what the fractal design is all about: is generating the power at the edges, but operating it as if it's a cooperating whole. And so the idea for this particular arrangement is, sure, do this in Louisiana. You want to do it in a structured way so that you avoid the hurricane zone for the initial steps, but then it becomes resilient for the whole state. But you don't want to do this just for Louisiana. It looks like Texas would be the number 2 place because it's the neighbor, and there's a lot of coordination that goes on between Texas and Louisiana, especially as the ports take place. Louisiana is the largest port in the United States by tonnage in New Orleans, but Houston is about number 4 as far as what's going on. So if you look at the arrangement as far as the Gulf Coast area, you expand to other states. And so we have introductions to the governors of those states that would help promote this idea as it matures, as it becomes successful as far as what's going on. But by the time you get about 10 states involved, you can say goodbye to your sales force because you don't need them anymore, because all 50 states in the United States will want to do this particular thing after a while. So it's a fairly interesting little project that's been born.
What is, John, I don't see how the nation as a whole gains the militarization of part of our electric generation and of our data system. If you put it behind the fence, you lose transparency. I have never seen anything go behind a fence and get more transparent. It's actually, I mean, it's just an absurd concept. Yeah. Once the military gets something, I've written things for the military. I used to own Defense Week, a rather important defense publication at one time. But before that, I wrote several papers for the Pentagon, could never see them because they had been classified. So you think you want to have the buzzbar behavior in the classified? The quickest thing and the easiest thing for the military to do when asked a hard question or even a soft question is classify it. National security. We will have a black hole of disinformation or no information whatsoever. It seems to me a very, very dubious proposition.
Well, you bring up a very good point. But this particular program is not the military's program. This is more like an extension of the end-use.
Where is the fence? If it is inside the fence, it is the military's program, I assure you.
I'm sorry.
Everything I've ever seen, including things that shouldn't be classified at all. Jim Schlesinger and I worked on this for a long time, how to declassify and keep things declassified. And the moment you put them behind any kind of fence, the tendency to draw the shades and shut out the light is tremendous.
Well, this is akin to the end-use lease program, if you're familiar with that particular program, in that the only thing that the military is doing is they're leasing land. In terms of what actually goes on, this is private enterprise. This is the utility. that's operating this. The base has to buy its power from the utility or this special division of the utility. So it does not have its hands on the control of the thing as far as the power. This is the utility's operation. They just happen to be leasing land on the space. But it does, just in terms of the way the arrangement would be put together, it does operate in as a virtual power plant type of thing, but it is not operated by the military.
Yeah, I would say as a former utility guy that dealt with this in real life, that the challenge of the virtual power plant is that if the assets, regardless of where they are located, behind the meter, in front of the meter, don't matter. If the assets that need to be included in the balance of the hertz, the 60 hertz, uh, those assets need to be dispatchable real time when the utility needs them to maintain the balance of the grid. If they are not, then they cannot be included in the balance of the grid, which means that for all intended purposes from the utility, they don't exist.
And
That,
I think
that is the
that's
challenge.
understood. I think that's understood in the concept of virtual power plant.
Yeah.
I certainly think that it should be dispatchable and that we can get that kind of coordination with AI, which we probably couldn't have gotten before. So you can now bring on very diverse generating very quickly, instantly, which wasn't possible even with fast switching. You now have almost real-time switching, so that sources that were not dispatchable can now be regarded as dispatchable. And I think that's happening across. And the use of batteries in that system increases the availability of dispatchable power around the clock.
Mm-hmm.
This,
We got hold on, Johnny, John Reynolds. Let me acknowledge John Butler joining us.
hi.
We're talking about your favorite topic. We'll give you a word in a moment. John Reynolds, go ahead.
Yeah. The particular model that we were describing here, it in phases, it goes in because you need to show value quickly as far as what's going on, but then you need to have a plan as far as where do you go after day one as far as what's going to happen. So initially, this arrangement that is being looked at here uses natural gas as far as the basis, as far as the generation. It goes in place very quickly. We have electric batteries in place and also thermal batteries in place. And we have carbon capture arrangements relative to the natural gas arrangements. But it's all put in place so you have a very smooth source of what power is, and you put the utility in charge of dispatching everything because they are the ones that are getting paid for the power. It's just a special arrangement as far as what's going to happen. Now, what goes on with this is you leave space for future expansion because there are things that you can't do today that you will be able to do in the not too distant future. And one of the interesting things we're looking at several options for this. So I have no particular vendor to recommend on this. But the concept of the nuclear battery is important. And the nuclear battery is something which is built at a factory, perhaps in Idaho or someplace like that, close to the national labs. But it's entirely built and it's entirely fueled at that location. And it gets delivered to the particular location where you want to have electric power. Some of these units are like you think of them as AAA batteries as far as installing them and using them, but they're like 10 megawatts. And so you bring this 40-foot shipping container in place and plug it in and turn it on, and it runs at full force.
So why do you call it a nuclear battery? I don't follow.
Well, it's all self-contained. There's nothing to do with fuel that is managed at the site.
Oh, it's a SMR, some small nuclear reactor.
It's like a micro
But why do you call it a battery? It's not a battery. It's
Well,
on and it's on. It's not on or off. It's on and off. Batteries can be on and off.
well, for this particular unit, you tend to turn it on and leave it running for like 10 years. And it you have various aspects of how it works depending on the technology that's actually used relative to the operation. But when it begins to show signs of wearing out, you replace it with another one. But you don't handle the fuel at the site. It goes back to the plant, and you're doing the any reprocessing through a very large other part of the ecosystem. But on site, there is no handling of the fuel.
Yeah, I mean, my vision of this has always been I defer back to my days at Austin Energy and Pecan Street, where I predicted that at one point, like Mr. Fusion and Back to the Future, you would walk into Walmart and buy a fuel cell, a nuclear cell that goes into anything, your house, your car, your RV, and these things last, 10 years,
Yeah.
right? So. So,
Well,
but
I
it's
think, I
but
think that's where it's headed.
once you turn it on, you can't turn it off.
That's right.
It's like a flare light.
That's
Once you turn the
yeah,
flare light on, you got to shoot it because you're gonna burn if you don't shoot it.
That's right. So
I've been looking at these things since the old days of the Atomic Energy Commission, and we looked at all these things, and the problem you end up with is nuclear. You don't just dump it when you're tired of it.
right.
And the
Exactly.
smaller it gets, the harder it is to keep control of. There's a word in the nuclear world which is MUF, materials unaccounted for. That is something that is irradiating or something that has the potential to irradiate or to create some toxin or to make a weapon. And you're going to litter the country with muck. And very soon, they got a problem with nuclear pacemakers. They worked brilliantly. You didn't have to take them out and change the battery. They were lifetime. But the undertakers didn't know about this, and they started incinerating the bodies with nuclear pace. And next thing, they had a hot stack, and they had the NRC around. It was and then they couldn't get any workers to go in there because they had to put outside their incinerators the nuclear material. And these undertakers didn't want anything to do with handling nuclear materials.
Sure.
And so they've stopped nuclear pacemakers, which is unfortunate for people who need pacemakers. Similarly, you could get a cesium clock, which would run forever, perfect time, but it was a nuclear product. And what do you do with it if somebody steals it, does something stupid with it, and suddenly you've got a hot nursery or a hot, no. You've got to keep a certain size, a certain mass to nuclear, just so you know that it's well taken care of. And that has heretofore happened because you need a lot of lead and steel, and that's big and heavy. When you get it down to small sizes, you create a whole new regimen of problems.
I absolutely agree. So this is not necessarily the Back to the Future arrangement, even though from a scientific standpoint, it's all along the same line. When you look at what a 10 megawatt power generating plant is, this is not something that you can lose very easily. And you probably want to have the military.
No, we've lost nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
There's some in Spain somewhere. We're still looking for them. So
yeah. But as you do this, what you find is it's not so much a technology arrangement as far as how hard it is to build a reactor or the science behind it, that sort of thing. This is more of an ecosystem situation that needs to be taken care of. And so this is all a matter of the art of managing the fuel, not so much anything else. It's although it's complicated, but if you're able to deal with this and not have to do anything on the customer site as far as what's going on, and you have a good enough fuel reprocessing arrangement, The facts are that this so-called waste, there are elements in this that are worth like 100 times as much money as the uranium was that went to it in the first place. And there are certain other things that don't use uranium at all as far as what is going on. So it's a matter of what your selection is as far as what the piece is all about. But to be able to bring it in, install it, let it run, and then take it someplace else, you avoid the problem of storing this stuff in tin cans in the backyards for the next 100,000 years as far as what's going on. And that's really the problem to be dealt with here. It's the fuel management arrangement. So as this begins to unfold, it's more than just a little project to generate power in a certain Midwest town as far as what's going on, even if it's on a military base. You have to work out the details of what's happening. And I think there's very interesting and promising things that are coming along on this arrangement. An awful lot of the things that are being stressed right now are short-sighted, and that they focus just on what they need to do to make the money that they wanted to make as far as the business plan, and they fail to consider the bigger problem as far as what to do with the waste. So I think that's very, very key. And we have this going on here in the United States, which of course is near and dear to our hearts. What we find is that we have some of our neighbors that would like very much to do this also in their own way, because their countries are in need of implementing the infrastructural changes that are going on. So you have the same sort of thing that could light up in Canada, but have a completely different set of priorities up there. So anyhow, those are examples of things that we're into right now. And we have Johnny Butler here.
Hello, John. How you doing?
Fine. How are you? How are
I
you?
do have some questions. I want to say to my distinguished colleague, Llewellyn, that when they go to create, I go in and I'm cremated. At least I'll be smoking hot again. I think that's the only time I ever be smoking hot again is when I go there. But John, one of the
Just
things
hold
that,
on, the summer of 26 is only beginning. Might be smoking hot in your home.
yeah, I want to say two things. The first thing is I'm so happy that we are trying to bring the issue of electricity to the very heart of America. I think that nobody's talked about it, as we've said before. It's like we're going to have electricity forever. And I think you mentioned something that I'm very interested in, which I think it might be part of our problem today, which is control. Now, there's a theory going about, or maybe it's not a theory, maybe it's a fact, that if we could put the right controls on the present grid, we could save 30%. So as we move forward, you're really talking about creating more kinds of devices, more electricity. But what about the idea of controls? And everything you need, is in the great state of Louisiana. I'll just say that before we start going, John. Good to see you again.
Yeah. You weren't here, but I wanted to thank you for the exercise with LSU. The hydrogen program down there that we started took a kind of a winding path, but it's highly successful. It's going into place now, but it's privately funded. It's not funded by any federal funds that's going on. But anyhow,
Well,
thank you for that.
Well, I'm on that foundation board. I need to introduce you to the new president.
Yes, please do.
I'll
Please
do that. Okay.
Yeah. So, but your question again is
About controls in general.
I think
And to what extent can we actually save 30% of the electricity that's generated? So you're talking about new generation. And there's a theory or fact that's saying, we had better controls on the present grid, then 30% of our problems, the delta, would disappear.
Yeah. Well, I think just the thinking on this, as you may recall from our prior discussions, the fractal design is really based on Einstein's theory of biomimicry, in which you want to break things up and lead from the edge, as opposed to having total central control, because there are too many million things going on to control centrally. So you have to make things smart enough, and just like the human body, you use this as a a sign of what works, even though it's been 4.5 billion years in evolution to get to this point as far as what's going to happen. Essentially, you can lead better from the front lines as far as what's going on if you're smart enough to know what's going on, and you get support from the upper group. But you know better what's going on locally than anybody else because you're right there to see what's going on. And so, what survives is when each of these units can continue to operate regardless of what chaos is going on with the rest of the world. That being said, there is the rest of the world, and we have our current grid that's in place, and it has certain advantages as far as what's going on. So the real answer is do both.
Right.
Do both, and use them as you wish. Because sometimes central control is very good as far as the shared consciousness of what's going on and the teamwork necessary to move things around. But again, it operates like a like a football team or a soccer team. It's the real things that are going on are on the field as far as what's going on. So it's from a control standpoint, you want two models: control from the edge for very tactical reasons, and then shared consciousness for the strategic reasons from above, to be able to manage the balance as far as what's going on. So I think
Yeah, I
Very
think I
well
like that.
said,
But
John.
one of the things, let me just say this from the Einstein approach, we got to assume that things are self-organizing. One of the things about the universe, as we know, that things in the universe, as Pergogine, who won the Nobel Prize to look at that issue, said that things are self-organizing, and what we got to ask ourselves is, are the units that's outside of the central control, can they self-organize themselves in the chaos to do what needs to be done? And your answer is, I think, is that they are self-organizing
well,
as we move forward.
they need to be. I'm saying
They
they
need
need
to be right.
they need to be
Mm-hmm.
because you can still do stupid things out at the edge as far as what's going on. But if you're organized well enough, it needs to be as easy as a video game to operate out there at the
Mm-hmm.
edge. And so it just needs to be easy. That's the key thing. Once it becomes easy, then nature will take its course as far as how you proliferate and stay alive.
So what would we look like with electricity in 50 years? I mean, will we have enough? Would it just be as Andrea said, you can just go pick it up at the Home Depot and stick it in here and stick it
Well,
in there and go from point A to point B? I mean, will we go from centralized at one time, or would it be
well,
rural, urban, cities versus rural, or what? What do you think?
that's a good thing to speculate on because it used to be telephone calls. You paid a lot of money for
Mm.
long distance telephone calls.
Not after 7:30, you did.
Yeah, it was free. You pay for other things right now,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so it could be that we'll have lots of power later on. We don't have it now,
Hmm.
but in 50 years, we could have lots of power. There will be other problems to deal with,
Okay.
but we could have lots.
Okay. Well,
What
thank you.
what what why do you say that, John?
Well, as you look at what's going on step by step,
You don't think electrification will continue to the nth degree, which means everything will be electricity based?
well, I think it could be. It's a matter of where did you generate the electricity? If you have to have one giant power plant and to feed every light bulb in the United States, that is fraught with problems. But I think as things improve, like a cell phone, my cell phone here has more computer power in it than the supercomputer that I used to run when I was in college down at the University of Texas. It has a lot more power to it, and yet it was free. It was given to me as far as
Hmm.
you pay for other things. So I think that my guess in speculation going forward is we're going to be able to generate a lot of electric power, but it has got a lot of refinement to go through beyond what's currently out there at the dime store right now.
And remember, you had to walk over to one building in Texas to run all of that.
That's right. That's right. I fond thoughts of the control data 1604.
That's right. Right by my office now when I was at McCall.
That's
So,
right. That's
but
right.
I think this is interesting to me. But as I said when I first began to speak, Americans just don't think that we have a problem in the future. It's like air that's going to be here, and we just don't talk about it in the political arena. It's not on any, nobody said, we have an electricity problem. It's just that it's going to be there. And your great state of Texas is inviting every business in the world to come, and they're not bringing any electricity. And I think that it's going to be really interesting in the future.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. I also think Texas is very key to the proliferation just because of the situation down there. If it's approached intelligently, as far as what's going on, there are just enough number of things going on in Texas that make it
Well,
special.
your governor has made it clear that the data centers cannot pass the cost on to the consumers. How about that?
Yeah,
And they must build their own generation independently of ERCOT as grid.
yeah, yeah. And as scary as that sounds, is okay. Well, what do we need to do to make that happen?
Yeah,
That's I think the challenge.
I have you in contact with him too.
Yeah, good.
So John Reynolds, tell us about any other projects you're working on.
I think those are the key ones. We have this project as far as the supply chain arrangement, where um, that I'm not sure I've described to you before, but when you look at the tracking of where things go from when you take them out of the ground through the various manufacturing processes to the distribution process, this whole business of tracking the supply chain here in the United States is kind of a new phenomena. And when you look around the world, there are certain other places that are further along with this, just because the problem has been bigger. But if you look at the Department of Defense and other groups as far as what the tracking is all about, now one of the groups that we're tracking on this and helping is this group that used to be with DHL, the big logistics company,
Mhm.
and some of the techniques they developed during the COVID vaccine distribution to speed things up, to make them faster and make them more accurate, have proven to be very good. They made uh, uh, this is a couple of years ago. They took the statistics. They've done about 73 million transactions through this mechanism. They made over $500 million on the tracking mechanism. It was actually developed over in Germany in terms of what was going on, and it's being promoted through a number of countries through the Irish, tax advantage arrangements that are going on. But they've moved to the United States as far as what's going on. It's a tracking system which uses a special variant of the blockchain to actually track what's going on. Now, it's not all the data. There's far too much data here and keep on. But the pointers that keep things glued together are blockchain oriented, and you need to keep the footprints within the country in which they occurred for national sovereignty purposes. So what's coming together on this is a clearinghouse operation, very similar to the way that the Visa credit card company started in the first place relative to the concept. But it uses blockchain approaches as far as the tracking of what's going on, and yet even though all the data has to stay in the country where it was gone, and you may have gone through 20 countries as far as what was going to have, may have 100 steps, you still need to be able to put the map together in like 1 or 2 seconds, even though the data was not in one central location. And so this is what they're doing. They're very famous for this. And so they're now going around to a variety of the logistics groups here in the United States and North America, in addition to other places. They've had experience in about 220 countries relative to the global aspect of what this is all about. And some of the more advanced stuff has gone on actually over the UAE relative to some of the techniques that are going on as far as this is concerned. But the tracking uses the digital product passport, and the implementation of this is now law over in Europe. It's creaking into implementation on a piece by piece by piece basis. But pretty soon you won't be able to ship anything into or out of Europe unless it's tracked by a digital product passport. So you could say, well, all right, that's Europe. We'll just do our own here in the United States. Well, think about it. It's like roaming on cellular telephones. Do you want to make it United States only? No. No, you want to be able to use your phones wherever you go in the world and just dial somebody and make them go. So I think what you'll see here is this digital product passport will bloom. It needs to be a separate organization structured somewhat like Visa was relative to the world's largest cooperative corporation, in which each country is sovereign as far as what's going on, and yet as it works, it does allow you to use your credit card, the blue, white, and gold, any place, any country you go, relative to what's going on. So this is being born right now, and uses a lot of the same principles that were done with that. And so we're using this, and you say, well, what does that have to do with electric power? Well, as you get into some of these things that we're talking about, as far as where was it manufactured, what was the materials that came from it, it's very much a part of the ecosystem of how power gets generated, but it's also part of the ecosystem of how everything is manufactured in the first place, as far as what's going on. So anyhow, I'd say watch this because it's not something that was done last Saturday afternoon. This has been around since the launch of the COVID vaccine arrangements as far as what went on, and it's a pretty good thing. So anyhow, we're helping them do this.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to run by you certain couple of things, just data points for the audience. So if we have 40 million streetlights in America, consuming roughly 50 kilowatt hours a month each, that's roughly 24,000 gigawatt hours of power needed. We produce roughly 1,000 gigawatt hours every hour. So that is 8,760,000 million gigawatt hours. So the streetlights only consume, a tiny amount of the total generation that we have today. And the challenge is really electrification of vehicles and new data centers and other things. So I think that streetlights in general are going to be fine. Basic residential needs are going to be fine. I think the answer to all these challenges is all of the above. Virtual power plants need to come to bear, and we just need to learn how to manage them, which goes back to better control systems, which is what Johnny is interested in.
Yep.
Well, the controls to me is like everything else, and I use the analogy of using your controls on your 1904 Vet and put it on my LC500 Lexus. It just won't get it done. So, and I'm just saying that we've been using the same controls on the electricity since 1913, and it would seem that just like we did the grid, it would just appear to me that we can be more efficient, if you will.
There are significant line losses because of physics and the material that we use and all that. And so yeah, we could save 30% roughly of the current fuel cost if we had better power electronics.
All right, so that's my point. I think that we're in an interesting place because remember we're talking about electrification of the country. We're talking about all of the cars being electric, in addition to what we now use, right?
And the trucks are going to happen. The autonomous electric trucks are going to happen, and then rail is going to happen everywhere. Lennon will finally be able to come by rail to Austin, Texas when he wants to.
And John, in the state of Texas, they're for the autonomous trucks, they're building their own highways.
Yes,
so they can go all night. So my question has always been. And I think that electricity is the new expressways. It's the new highway system. You know what I mean? And if you don't
is the best TCO distribution mechanism ever invented.
Absolutely. And if you don't have it, then you've got issues. And I think your point about the nationalism is very interesting. But I think when we put the rod, if you will, on China. For the chips, they created their own chips.
Sure.
So there's a lot of nationalism, John, that's going on in the world that we need to address because wherever you go, you need to be able to use your cell phone, or wherever you go, if you need to go to a hospital, they need to have your MyChart. It needs to be national. But John, how do we get rid of the nationalism, though? I mean, it seemed to be creeping back in a lot of ways.
I think I think some of it is appropriate
Mhm.
because of war that breaks out, and if you get cut off from something that you depend on, you need to be able to survive, even though you're at war with another country
I
for
agree.
whatever temporary basis that takes place. So I think that's all good. But the important thing is that if you can operate independently, if you can survive independently, you're better off than 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 a situation where you depend on somebody who can make you die just at the flick of a switch. As
Absolutely.
far as what's
Yeah,
going
the other key of all that, Johnny, is when it comes to transparency of knowledge and the applicability of knowledge globally is standards. Everything should be built with similar technology, the standards, and everybody knows how to
Hmm.
operate it, maintain it, repair, and all that. But I see the time, and maybe we can have some closing remarks, and as we thank John Reynolds for being with us. Llewellyn?
Well, thank you, John. It's lovely to see you, and I find it what you said very, very interesting indeed. I think the one thing we should remember is evolution is so complex, so swift that our linear thinking will not deal with the exponential future. We're doing a very inadequate job, and that's the way it's always been. It's good to see you. I'm glad you're prospering.
Yeah, yeah, Johnny?
It's always good to see you, and I will be in contact with you about the new people there. And I really like the idea that you help to put electricity at the very, very center of the consciousness of the country, because I think that's our new economic system. We got to
Fantastic,
do that.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Please get in touch because I have another idea for you for Louisiana specifically. You'll like it.
Okay, I'll send you an email. That'll
All
work.
right.
John Reynolds, thank you for being with us. We'll have you again. And congrats on everything and keep connected.
Okay. Sounds good.
Johnny, take us away.
Bye bye.
I've been throwing horseshoes over my left shoulder, and I've spent most all of my life searching for that four-leaf clover. Then you ran with me, chasing my rainbows. Darling, I love you too. That's the way love goes.
Woo!
Hey.
Johnny. All right, gents. Thank you very much.
Okay, take
Okay.
care. See y'all
Thanks,
again.
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.